Like most British people, I struggle to talk about myself, so I'll let you read all that stuff. Suffice it to say, I very nearly retired at the end of last year, but one thing leads to another. I thought rather than being on this stage today, I'd be happily ensconced in Cornwall, volunteering for the RNLI, and probably spending way too much time with my 6-year-old for certainly her tolerance levels. However, life does take different turns. It's proven a little bit challenging to find the property that I wanted, particularly one with solar panels, which will make the ladies who presented earlier very happy. So I have found one with solar panels, so all good, tick. But that's taken a while, as you can imagine. The RNLI do not want me, apparently. So Falmouth RNLI cruise, fully booked for the next 3 years. By the time I'd get on the list, I'd be too old. So if anybody wants to join me in a age-related campaign against the RNLI, do see me afterwards, because I'm very serious about it. I really do think I could drive a lifeboat. And the other thing that sort of, I guess, has got me on this stage is that despite the fact that I thought I was done with marketing after 30 odd years, AI has caught my interest. I would say I'm far from an expert. Hopefully the session that you went to earlier today covered all the bigger issues around AI, which is operational, moral, really, none of which I'm going to cover today. All I'm going to cover is a very simple, tactical, really, way that I've got very excited after 30 years of really trying to influence people to give those kinds of nonprofits their money, which I think is one of the most challenging things in the world to do. And if AI can help us all to do that, or to get people to put more solar panels on their house, or whatever, then that aspect of it for me means it's a good thing, and I think it's important that we engage with it on whatever level is most meaningful for you and your organization. So I'm going to cover a little bit about the context of AI. Spoiler alert or warning, I am going to briefly talk about serial killers. Not that I endorse them in any way, of course, but it's a good example, so I thought I'd do that. Like I said, a very tactical way, and then I'll talk a little bit at the end about results and is this tactical way of using AI actually working. Probably also worth mentioning, given that the room I'm assuming is mainly full of campaigners and not fundraisers, that I think everything I'm going to say applies every bit as much to how you can use AI to build audiences around campaign actions as fundraising. It just so happens that most of the things I've been doing have been around raising money. So, anyone know who this is? This isn't the theatre bit. It's a shouty out quiz, so don't feel you have to put your hand up. It probably says more about you guys than me that you don't know who it is, actually. And probably means you're all good people and I'm a bad person. This is Harold Shipman, who I hesitate to call him this, but is the UK's most prolific serial killer. Again, not endorsing any of his actions, but I use this example because I attended a conference like this a few years back, and this example was used, and it completely and utterly switched my brain around what AI was and enabled me to kind of look at it in a really simple way, cutting through all the tech stuff, all the other nonsense that actually gets very confusing, and fundamentally made me realize that what AI is really, really good at is spotting patterns. And if you can keep that really simple bit in your eye, don't worry about it being some kind of sentient being that's going to destroy the planet. Maybe it will, I don't know, but I don't think so. But if from a marketing or a campaigning perspective, just keep in your head, it's really good at spotting patterns. It's not thinking about those patterns. It's just spotting patterns at scale. And the reason I use the Shipman example is that had AI been employed on what he was up to, it would have very, very obviously spotted that there was something very wrong going on with his practices. as you can see from the chart. So maybe to flip gears a little bit into something that's a bit more related to what we all do. One of my first encounters with AI, back in the day, my company built a payment solution, much like Engaging Networks, but nowhere near as good. I'm talking 20 years ago, because there wasn't really one around, and UNHCR used it for a long time. A few years back, we ran a head-to-head test using a different payment solution that actually employs AI at the point of transaction. What that AI does is it collects data or patterns, let's say, that we couldn't possibly have dreamed of being able to collate at scale back in the day, because it's not data that we would typically store in our CRM. It's not the things you would see there. It's what browser are they using, all that stuff you see in Google Analytics that you probably ignore, or don't feel is that useful. All that stuff at scale enables this particular platform to do some interesting things with donor journeys at the point of transaction. So without having collect any bit of data, you look at what time of day is it, what device is this person using, where are they located, is it raining? I made that bit up. It doesn't matter if it's raining or not. It might do. Who knows? Maybe in the future that'll be a big driver of more revenue. But collects all those things and enables you to give that person an experience that is tailored to all that data. Now, why do I show that example? Because unfortunately, in a head-to-head test with my payment gateway that my company had built, this AI solution absolutely trashed it. And very soon after, I got rid of that payment gateway and pretty much worked with this one because it was performing to a level double in terms of regular givers, because it was able to take those insights at the point of transaction and deliver the right ask to these people. So over to the, my post-it's fallen off, so the theatre might have to wait. Just a quick sort of whiz around the room in terms of how you guys or your organizations are using AI currently. It's a shouty out quiz, you don't have to put your hand up. Data visualization, great. That wasn't one on my list, but good. Anything else? Yep, organizing notes. More? I suspect there was going to be like a torrent, right? Because everyone was using it for everything, no? Or you just like really secretive? Because it's a massive competitive advantage. No, you're just not using it. Okay. We'll give up on the theatre. The theatre was... I asked AI what you were using it for. And obviously I was really hoping you'd tell me exactly what was on this list, but you didn't. But I'll still read it out. Predictive modeling, hyper-personalization, lapse predictions, and chatbots. Any of those seem familiar? Maybe it's just somebody else who's using it and AI got confused. Well, there you go, AI. It's AI for you. Okay, so let me talk you through a way that particularly Delve are using AI. Like I said, very tactical. I don't think there's anything strategic about this, but I think it's interesting and could help us all. So one of the other things that AI doesn't like or isn't as good with is structured data. So all the stuff you've been lovingly collecting in your CRMs is useful, but it really loves unstructured data. It really loves you to tell it stuff about like how you feel and things like that, which is obviously completely unprecedented with what we've been able to do in the past with our data, because it's all been largely about recency, frequency, value, etc. So if you take the two sides of the data that you could possibly have, so what's in your CRM on your left, and what's in what people tell you. And by what people tell you, I mean conducting interviews with people who are your supporters, your campaigners perhaps, high-level givers, legacy givers, doesn't matter, whichever category you want, get hold of about 30 of those people and conduct a series of interviews with them in a, I was going to say quasi-scientific way, but that's doing it a disservice. It's actually a methodology that is well respected in the world of neuroscience. It's called jobs to be done. Has anyone ever come across that method? Yeah. Okay. So, yeah, it's just a methodology that helps you get around that issue that anyone who's ever sat in a focus group for a charity realizes that the person who's they're asking questions to doesn't actually even know who the charity is that they're in the focus group for. So rather than them telling you what they think you want to hear, this jobs to be done methodology enables you to ask a series of questions that all really lead to, if you give this charity money or you give them your voice, what do you expect them to do with it? What at the core of that action, money, voice, whatever, what are you expecting them to actually do with that money, that your time, whatever it is? And at the end of that process, you basically get a bunch of data that you're able to stick into an AI agent alongside your CRM data that, to boil it down to something very, very simple, if it's done right and constantly refreshed, which is the other thing, you sort of end up with your best donor or campaigner in the room with you every time you want to ask a question. So every time you have a piece of creative, perhaps, every time you're figuring out what's my next campaign, what should we do at Christmas, blah, 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 you've got someone there with you who is arguably the best donor, high net worth individual, legacy pledger that you've ever had in your life, sitting there, and you can ask it whatever you want. Is this creative good? Should I go with this campaign? Now, I'm not saying that you then slavishly follow what it says, but it will give you a very smart, well-considered answer that is then a springboard for you to go to whatever stage you want to go to next. And guess what? If you house it in your CRM, it will learn every day. Every day it'll learn new things. Like some organizations are plugging all their telephone scripts in. So if you're doing face-to-face. So any input that's coming into the organization from real people who support you and care about you, that agent can keep learning every day and find out more and more, get better and better at answering the sort of questions that are going to be really important. I think I talked about this, but in terms of what the steps are, so interview people, whoever they may be, build an agent that interprets it in a neuroscientific way, and then use that agent to do whatever you want, really. Some organizations actually feed their website through it. So your landing pages, your whatever content you have that's important to you, you can ask this agent what it feels about it, what it thinks about it. Is it likely to generate an action? So does it work? This is what Delve have ended up with in terms of what they then use for each individual client who's done this process. And it's a matrix, effectively. So on the left, you can see what you're probably used to seeing when you do various campaigns, so personas to a degree. This is actually one that Habitat for Humanity US did. So various personas based on what triggers their motivation to interact with this organization on the left. And then on the right, various creatives and a score for each of those creatives. Whether it be a Facebook ad, whether it be a Google ad, whether it be a mail pack, whatever, it doesn't matter. Whatever the channel is, ask that AI agent to score the creative based on their particular motivations. And what you can then also do within the tool, and by the way, this is a tool that you own. This sits in your CRM, right? It's your thing. It's not the world's thing or an agency's thing. And you can see this particular ad. Once the AI agent had its way with it and decided that it should be slightly rephrased, it went from a 3 score in terms of likelihood to convert to an 8 score. And like I said, you can then do that with whatever creative you want. Moving on then to some results. So as you can imagine, it's sort of early days with this stuff. And also a lot of organizations are quite, what's the word I should use? Like, I know charities don't like to think themselves as being competitive, do they? But I think some organizations do think that this might be a bit of a secret sauce, and they do think that they maybe shouldn't talk about it too much. But the ones that will, this is not a not-for-profit, this is an insurance company. They conducted the interviews, they have this agent on their CRM, and they went through 29 different creative concepts. Now, typically what they would have done is they would have put those concepts into market and spent whatever money they needed to spend to learn whether they were going to work or not, or which ones of those were going to perform best. Using the agent beforehand, they were able to not do that or not do anything like the scale of testing that they previously would have done, saving themselves about 90% of their testing budget before they then launched it to the real world. And a not-for-profit example, so, and I see this sort of a little bit, and is anyone here from Amnesty? Amnesty? Yeah. I'm very good friends, or was very good friends. He sadly passed away with a guy called George Irish, who you may know. Passed away last year, loveliest man on the planet, anyone who's ever met him. But he was doing some really interesting stuff with Amnesty Canada around predictive modeling. I think some of it is still available online, or Dwayne probably knows where to find it, if he's still there, yeah. So yeah, just some really, really interesting stuff about similar sort of methodology, but without this interview part. I think the interview part might be the bit that's a secret sauce. I think it's probably still a little bit too early to tell, but it's all looking quite positive that it's going to generate a lot better results, yeah. So this was MS Society US. They did same interviews across a different range of audiences, so major, mid, recurring, etc. And then deployed the right creative to the right people in the different segments that they built, and raised more money in the last 2 months of the year than they had through the email program previously. So having thought that I was going to need loads of time, I think I'm pretty much on questions now. I could tell one more story, though, if anybody wants one more story before I do questions. Being as the theatre bit didn't work, then I'll just tell. It's a cautionary AI tale, so maybe that will set us all off feeling very excited as we go to break. So a few years back, the good people of Paris decided that they would go down the Boris bike route. Boris bike really ages me, doesn't it? I don't think they call them Boris bikes. They've no reason to, I don't think. Anyway, they employed AI to decide where they should start the bikes off each day and where the bikes should hopefully end up each day. Now, much to their annoyance, once they then ran these models in real life, so the predictive models all worked great and the bikes were in the right place every day. Much to their annoyance, several weeks in, they found out that actually people were leaving the bikes sort of maybe 500 to 1,000 meters short of where they should be in terms of the stations that they provided for them. and they just could not figure it out at all. Why? It's all clearly signposted. Why aren't you leaving the bikes where they should be? And in the end, it took a human to drive out in a van to go to these various locations where the bikes should not be, but were every day, to find out that what was stopping people going that last little bit was an incline. So although the AI agents had figured out all the stuff, all this very complex stuff, the bit of information they hadn't given it is how averse humans are to cardio. That was a good laugh. I'll use that story again. It's not bad. For a conference, that's not bad. I will go for questions then now.
Great, thank you. So I took the opportunity to ask AI a question about what to ask you. So how are the most successful fundraisers using AI to scale their insights without losing the deeply human, emotional connection that drives philanthropy?
I suppose at the risk of being stoned or whatever people do at conferences these days, I think potentially it's the opposite of what you're saying. If this proves to be true, that you can get these insights from people that are real, and I'm probably as skeptical as you are, right? I need to see much more data to show me that this is all going to play out. But in theory, and like I said, somebody who's spent their entire career worrying about algorithms and trying to get my head as deep into how meta does things as humanly possible, hoping that certainly back in the day when I was like working on DM packs for Greenpeace or the RNLI, it was all very much hearsay or personal opinion. And personally, I've always hated that. I always hate that you sit in a room maybe one day and like 10 people decide what the Christmas campaign is. I mean, how much nonsense is that, right? It's just ridiculous. Just because somebody talks louder or, they're the boss. It doesn't make any sense, right? So if there's a way for us to get, like I say, our best donor, our best campaigner in the room with us to help guide us, right? To help to sort of make some of those decisions in a more scientific way, then I can't help but thinking that that's a good thing and gets us closer to what they're feeling than further away.
Wonderful, thank you. You mentioned the new tool using AI tailored the journey, which improved conversions. Do you have any examples of what this tailoring looked like?
Gonna have to go again, sorry.
Sorry. The question is, you mentioned the new tool using AI tailored the journey, which improved conversions. Do you have examples of what the tailoring looked like?
Oh, you mean the donation journey?
Yes, I think that's what they're referring to, yes.
The provider of that tool is very secretive about what they include. I think they're getting more open to having their arms twisted. But I mean, the risk of the provider of that tool, person who's the marketing director, is a very close friend of mine, so I wouldn't want to upset him in any way whatsoever. But personally, if you like have smart techie people in your life, programming an AI agent to figure that stuff out at the point of transaction on your website is not a work of sort of Oppenheimer. It's relatively straightforward, I'm led to believe. Now, the issue with that is obviously volume, right? If you've got 10 donations a day going through, then your AI agent isn't going to be very smart for a very long time. If you've got 50,000, then all of a sudden you're probably in a better place to actually use some of those triggers that we wouldn't be able to spot, right? Who cares what browser you're using? Who cares if your dog's just bitten you? Whatever, whatever that thing is that the AI can see around that moment that you're transacting has to be at scale for it to be useful.
Great. I think we've got time for a couple more questions. How good is AI guessing how different people will actually respond to campaign content? Does it perform better or worse for anyone, for example, minority groups?
Blimey. Hand on heart, And I can only speak from personal experience. And this certainly doesn't cover minority groups, but we did a campaign for UNICEF US about a year and a half ago. The Paddington thing that they do, right? The Paddington Bear tie-in. And for whatever reason, they were more comfortable using AI to generate copy for Paddington than they are for their normal work, which, fair enough, makes sense. But we ran about 60 or 70 different creatives generated by AI based on creatives that had been generated in the UK campaign, actually, but then got it to iterate. And pretty much every AI version outperformed the normal version. One very small case study, one. But also the barrier to entry to me is so low. I mean, it's a moment's work, right? It's not. It also did generate some Paddington images, which were fabulous, much better than the ones they had. But unfortunately, the copyright people at Paddington wouldn't let us use any of them.
And one more question for you. How do you ensure messaging and propositions don't drift as you use AI to tailor them? Is there a risk of disjointed comms?
I mean, maybe that question is born out of how, I don't know, the campaigning and the fundraising world, or certainly the world that I've inhabited. Performance is everything, right? It's absolutely the only measure that anyone is worried about on a daily basis. So whatever variants you've created using AI or not, the judge can be the AI at the beginning, but then when you put them into market, it's only going to be, does it perform or doesn't it, right? It's extremely black and white, I think. Yeah, and probably the same with campaigning, right? I mean, it's not my expertise, but either you're getting the amount of signatures you want or you're not.
Great. Thank you, Jason. There is one final question that I think is actually for the room to answer. Somebody's said, I'm curious how many charities in the room have an AI policy. So if people want to raise their hands if their organisation has an AI policy, that might help them. Probably half and half, maybe.
Yeah, I think the other really important thing about everything I've described is that none of this is out in the world. This is all your agent that you've downloaded from a small language model and put on your CRM. You're not then, and you're tailoring it to your audience, right? You're not then exposing it to the world, if that's a concern, which it would be, right? I get that.
Great. Thank you very much, Jason. Thank you for your time.